Back in the summer of 2007, my then wife and 2 children moved to Vancouver Island and bought the Rock Cod Cafe, a restaurant with memories that go back to the 90s for me when I worked as a dishwasher and did after-hours janitorial work. There have been many coffees and meals there since then. I would take off to Alberta every once in a while, go to school, go farming, learn about how life has its own idea, come back to the island, go commercial fishing, make art, make music, go back to Alberta and work in the oil field, come back to the island and canvass for Oxfam. So many disparate guesses about how to do life. And through it all, the Rock Cod Cafe. So 30 years later, 13 of those years in ownership, it seems I never left. I swear I was just passing through. I'm an art school dropout. I never imagined in 1,000 years I'd be a restaurant owner. It's been curious to hit midlife with all of its hard questions, to consider morbid things like mortality and the bursting of all sorts of ideas that were very much ready for the grave of thoughts that have been dying to lie down and rest. There have been many transient things, people, companies, moments, and many seemingly permanent things, people and companies, one of which is the subject of this testimony. I try my hardest to listen to the wiser voices, and as a result, I find myself living in a world with a life that makes my heart want to burst with gratitude. It's led me to my own moral places, boundaries, and considerations as an autonomous human being. That being said, I'm drawn to people and companies that play in a similar realm of doing their best to be their best. SYSCO. It's this massive company, like massive, big enough to make the plane bombing scene in Roger Waters' The Wall remake kinda massive, like that big. As a result, and being a small business owner in a very particular valley, full of very particular opinions about food culture, supply chain, and the drive for local, I have kind of kept under wraps the fact that I am allied with and deeply rely on a business of this scope and influence that sometimes gets a bad rap simply because of its size. And you know what? I'm so good with it. I can say without a shadow of a doubt that SYSCO has proven to be a progressive, professional, amazing organization, and particularly impressive, an organization with heart beyond what the common narrative would imagine for a company of its scope. In my time at the Rock Cod Cafe, I made some good moves and I made some poor moves. My reps, of which I've only had 2 in the last 13 years, weathered the flippant nature of those moves and showed up in such a good way in response to, and sometimes in spite of, them all. I learned I could count on SYSCO to deliver with huge consistency. I learned that SYSCO charges a fair price. Fly-by-nighters might come along with a $5 a pound savings, but when push comes to shove, they aren't at my door when I need them. SYSCO always has been. I learned that SYSCO appreciates employees, and the employees in turn appreciate us. That the management chain is robust and progressive and can pivot as the times and the markets demand. I've never once felt like SYSCO fell behind in the many subtle and not so subtle reinventions of my restaurant. In fact, more often than not, they were there to participate, support, and encourage those reinventions. I learned that SYSCO's supply chain is one of the most sturdy and well-made in the industry. And for the products that are make or break in my restaurant, I've never been left hanging. Not once. It's good to have relationships with independents, but over 100,000 tickets a year demands consistency at a level most cannot keep up with. I learned that SYSCO values efficiency, but not at the cost of quality. It's a company that invests and reinvests in everything to do with its operations. I learned that SYSCO draws a line when it comes to their environmental impact and is always striving to be progressive in their policy and procedure. Most importantly, and most relevantly, I learned that SYSCO is willing to get down when a worldwide pandemic hits. SYSCO is a major reason why I'm making this video right now and not navigating the frightening world of bankruptcy. Maybe it just meant they weren't stupid and dead men can't pay, but I know that the cold financial facts were well warmed by the inherent knowledge of what good relationship looks like. I can't wait for this world to right itself, so we can go back to the personal relationship building that SYSCO and its representatives are so good at. Speaking of relationship, I'd like to finish by saying how grateful I am for my rep, Nick Scott, who has become just as much a friend as colleague. He's helped me in such fundamental ways, and I know that help couldn't happen in the ways it did and does without an effective, driven, and robust team of support behind him. Thank you, SYSCO. You've been one of the restaurant's greatest allies on this crazy journey. Thank you for taking care of us so well.